What I believe is a differentiator for Benchmark is its research-based instruction and how we so effectively blend that with innovative thinking and practice. I mean, Irene Gaskins started a school for marginalized learners at a time where the American vernacular didn't even include learning disabilities as a fully understood concept. She dove right into this work and was pioneering from day one.
I'm Irene Gaskins. I was a teacher in schools for 10 years before I decided that I saw a need that wasn't being met, and that was that the kids that were falling behind in reading were never getting caught up. And that really concerned me. At that point, I had 42 students in my tutoring practice in my home. So the township manager paid me a visit. He says, "I've come to talk to you about the fact that you're running a school in your home." I said, "No, I'm not running a school. I'm just tutoring a few kids." He said, "Well, just tell me how many students you have in your practice." And I said, "Just 42. He said, "Some people can think that's a school."
I knew Irene Gaskins before Benchmark was founded. She had tutored my son, who had ended up as a non-reader at the end of first grade. And she had changed him dramatically. And when she told me that she was starting a school and asked me to join the board of directors in 1970, I said that I would follow her any place.
The Wallingford Presbyterian Church pastor said, "We would really love to have you start your school in our basement." We bought some used desks from a local school district that we heard a rumor that they were throwing them out. And so Margaret Williams, who I'd hired as my secretary, and I drove over, and she and I loaded the desks into the back of the pickup truck and took it over to the Wallingford Presbyterian School Church, and that's how we started.
In the early years, we started out with a staff of 4 skilled teachers. Really, the school was on their backs. I mean, they were the ones who really knew how to handle children, be very positive with them, and also know the theories, the research theories, and the ways that Irene had wanted us to teach.
I got to know the top researchers in the country. I'd read enough in my 10 years prior to starting Benchmark School that I knew who the top people were. So those were the people that I would go to hear. Richard Anderson, who was head of the Center for the Study of Reading, he concentrated on comprehension, and one of his rules, so to speak, was number of words read correlates with progress in reading. So it's the volume of reading that kids get to do at their appropriate instructional level. Another person that I met talked about strategy instruction. His name was Michael Presley. He was developing and helping my staff develop strategy instruction, teaching kids how to comprehend, how to learn from the material that we're reading. We had the great privilege of working with Donald Graves, and he was developing research on writing instruction. And I don't think it had even quite dawned on me or the rest of my staff that doing a lot of writing is also going to influence your reading, and it's going to influence your spelling. Linnea Airy was doing the research on decoding. This is a rhyming approach where you use the same spelling pattern, like A-N-O-I-L for oil or whatever. So you always look first at the vowel, A-E-I-O-U, the vowel and what comes after it in that pattern. Do you already know a word that has the same pattern? Oh, you were able to get man because you knew can.
I was so excited about what she was trying to do to make a difference in the lives of children that I took this job, and it paid less than $2 an hour, and it didn't matter to me. I think back to those days and a staff meeting that was held regularly, and we brainstormed about all the children, we brainstormed about their needs, we brainstormed about how to teach them better. It didn't matter if you were the secretary or a volunteer or an aide in a classroom. We were all working as a team, trying to figure out how to be creative, how to be problem solvers, how to be innovative, how to approach children in a way that would work for them.
Benchmark did, in fact, have a reputation of being first in a lot of ways. It was never boring. Lots of interesting, fun times, great camaraderie among the staff. But the mission was the same. The mission was to work with bright children and their families, children who were having difficulty learning to read, difficulty in mainstream education. We did what was necessary to provide a comprehensive educational and social emotional experience for the student population at the time.
We were talking about school names, and we ended up, as everybody knows, with the name Benchmark. The reason for that is that we were going to take children who had struggled in school, screen them and place them at their actual reading levels and functioning levels. So a benchmark is a starting point and a place in the ground where all other distances are measured from.
The thing that I remember the most was Mrs. Gaskin coming around the corner with her hair done, all animated with her lipstick on and her beautiful suit. And she looked like she glided as she came towards the children. I never thought I had a learning difficulty. I kind of thought it was that this is just who I was. I was a little quirky or different. But to come to find out, it's called a learning difference. And to me, that's what's beautiful, because we're all different. If you see a slight problem, it's not to shuffle it underneath the carpet. It's really to say, what can I do? How can I educate my child better? How did I get educated? Which really was my parents who loved me enough to get me in front of Mrs. Gaskin and her new education back in the early 70s to try to educate kids that had some of these things. And today, some of us are extremely successful.
We are on a 68-acre estate that was owned by Dr. John Gibbon, and he had passed away, and his wife was living there on this 68 acres. Real estate developers were just dying to get their hands on it. So Swarthmore College student, he brought along with him the kid that he was mentoring, and his name was Matthias, and he was a summer school student at Benchmark, and he went to Mrs. Gibbon, and he said to her, "Do you know that school up there is trying to get more land, and you have all this land. You should sell some of it to Benchmark, or just give it all to Benchmark." And she said, "Well, Matthias, that's such a lovely idea. Why don't you have them give me a call?"
Without Matthias, we wouldn't be here today. He walked into Dr. Gaskin's office one day and told her that her school was good, but it stunk. And it stunk because it was the basement of a church, and it had some water. And he said he had a friend who had some property in media he'd like her to call. Nobody believed it would lead to anything, but here we are today, thanks to Matthias.
So Kate Perry was one of my first teachers, and she had her master's from Penn in reading. And her husband said, "I'm going to go get my master's degree in architecture." I said, "Well, Kate, I'm sure he has projects that he has to do. Do you think he'd like to design a school?" And he built a building that was just for our kind of kids. We moved into that building in 1975.
So I arrived at Benchmark School in summer of 1975, and unlike most jobs, I was working before I ever started teaching, along with students, parents, and faculty, painting walls of the school that was going to be ours, laying tile in the rooms that needed to be laid. It required a lot of people's attention, cooperation to make that happen.
We just kept building and building and building, and every time we built, we would do something very unusual and extraordinary, and meeting the needs of our kids, that meant a lot to them.
The development of athletics at Benchmark happened rather quickly. Even though we didn't have a gym or a field or anything, we had a group of kids that were very athletic and very much interested in something that they could be proud of with their school. Basketball didn't seem to be their niche, but soccer did seem to be their niche. So we started to practice out on the wood chips, which is what we used for a surface back then, behind the school. Fortunately, we were friends with the Battles, who owned the estate, with an open cornfield basically next to them that we purchased, turned into a soccer field. I remember many practices. We pulled our shirts out, We walked across the field and we filled it with rocks and stones that were littered all over the field and threw them off the side of the field till it got to the point where I thought it was safe enough to play. With children that have a challenge in the classroom, it's just so important to make the school day fun and exciting. And when you can introduce sports to the daily routine, whether it be at recess, whether it be in the gym class, I think it adds tremendously.
What most schools and teachers don't realize, it's not about teaching methods. It's also about teaching kids about the person that they need to be successful. And that's a very big part of our program. And the kids do buy into it because it's like we've told them a secret they didn't even know.